Disenchantment is probably the show that has entertained, disappointed, amused, and annoyed me more than any Netflix cartoon out right now. It always seems to be on the cusp of becoming something more before stumbling back to being a medieval Futurama with worse jokes. But on my most recent rewatch and resisting the urge to skip through the stale second season, I forced myself to stick through it and started to come up with different interpretations for why this season was such a retread of the first. Then, somewhere between Leela is still tripping balls on royal honey and the kingdom is cursed to never evolve past the Dark Ages, a more compelling idea took hold. One that is actually supported by the story and only mildly held together by wishful thinking. So, here's my video on how Disenchantment isn't a sitcom, but a slow burn coming of age story for Elfo. I mean Bean. And get ready, because if I have to rationalize my way out of hating season 2, you can go check out this video's sponsor, Inksethtic. Inksethtic is, in my opinion, one of the internet's finest providers in high-quality tapestries, with options that range from hauntingly beautiful to psychedelic perfection. Inksthetic's crisp HD textures are extremely vibrant, and it shines and glistens in almost any light source, with skulls and foliage being one of my personal favorites. And as someone who is, if I'm being honest, pretty picky in what I put on my wall, the fact that I would add this to my decor is one of the best recommendations you're gonna get. And hey, they even have Disenchantment merch right now. And if you wanna get this and more, use promo code SARCASTIC to get 10% off your next purchase, or Sarcastic50 to buy one and get 50% off the next. With new items available every month and the option to custom order merch, you don't have a reason not to check out Inksethtic. Now, enough of my shilling, let's talk about Disenchantment and how it's really the story of Bean going from a teen to a queen. Tia Beanie, Bean for short, is the Princess of Dreamland, a satirical Dark Age kingdom, the daughter of King Zog, a man who only became king after his brother mysteriously died from poison, and Queen Dagmar, a noble from a foreign land who after giving birth to Bean was petrified, leaving the young princess in a broken home. Zog loves his daughter, but the loss of his wife coupled with the responsibility of the crown turned a man who already communicated exclusively in yells into an emotional cinder block, and turning an alcoholic into what doctors would describe as a super alcoholic. Coupled with a new wife, Una, who is already world-weary herself and content to only do the bare minimum in life, Bean is left sorely lacking in parental figures. This is made even worse when the strong-willed child meets her baby brother, Derek, whose existence only serves to reinforce the strict gender roles of their medieval society, with the idea being drilled into Bean's head that she only existed to marry and to give said husband children. Every part of Bean's life was mapped out, but she quickly proved to be more than just a chip off the old cinder block, inheriting Zog's stubbornness and his alcoholism. The Bean we are first introduced to in the series is a confident but secretly insecure party girl hours away from being married to a handsome inbred idiot. So Bean spends her last remaining hours of freedom doing her usual shtick, going to a local tavern where she drinks, gambles, fights, and only slightly abuses her status as royalty to get what she wants. But what's more important here is that this is Bean's happy place. It's where she feels the most like herself, away from her predetermined fate at the castle where she has to put on the facade of the fantasy princess that she isn't. Bean values her personal freedom more than anything else in these first 2 episodes, ditching her wedding after the idiot killed himself, and the royal in-laws simply choose a different son for her to marry. And just seeing the callousness of which other people control her fate becomes the trigger to Bean finally making a break for it, accompanied by her token nice guy simp Elfo and demonic bender Lucy. These 3 quickly form a tight-knit group and start the process of Bean becoming a leader by giving her 2 death-prone sidekicks to look after, teaching her responsibility that extends solely to those she's close to. The whole runaway bride thing hits a literal dead end, causing Best Girl to jump to her death, but survives thanks to plot armor. Returning to the castle, we can see one of Bean's defining attributes that she inherited from her mother, using quick thinking and manipulation to get what she wants, which in this case, her fiancé mauled to death by siren walruses. Though after this fails, the wedding is a go. In the middle of which though, Zog finally finds a line even he won't cross, refusing to make Bean bury a chauvinist pig. It's a long story, Elfo's fault, just go with it. This is the moment of Bean's dreams. She's finally given the freedom to do what she wants without the looming threat of marriage hanging over her head. After years of restrictions, years of being told what to do, now all she has to worry about are Zog's house rules. and the young adult takes a moment to breathe and enjoy it, because from here on out, she can do what she wants, and proceeds to do nothing with it. See, here's a funny thing about becoming an adult. There's this great sense of relief of no longer having to do the things that parents in school want you to do, but you quickly realize that the crushing responsibility of taking care of your own ass is far more stressful than the other things were. It's sink or swim, so it's unsurprising that so many graduates choose to stay at home with their parents. But many, rather than finding a path in life, are instead left floundering. This is the all too familiar situation Bean finds herself in, with the majority of season 1 maintaining the same status quo of drunken antics and wacky adventures that the series will become known for. But I get it, life is hard, and it's easier to just do what you know when you don't know what to do. Bean flirts with responsibility, at times shows a desire to be more than what she is, with her first real taste of responsibility being when she gets kicked out of the house and has to take a job as an executioner, which she fails at for being too kind-hearted for unmotivated murder. Then later, her father throws her a bone, naming Bean an ambassador, a position her wit and charm lets her excel at. But this potential career is ruined by her personal toxic friend Lucy, who enables her alcoholism, causing her to make a fool of herself at a state dinner. She patches things up with her dad, sure, but Bean then just goes back to doing her normal Tuesday night thing, drinking and stealing drugs from her stepmother's purse. Bean isn't necessarily stagnant in this first season, but she certainly isn't going anywhere either. She's a confused teen with a lot on her mind and unsure of her own worth. That is until a certain choice is presented to her. See, King Zod is obsessed with activating an amulet that is said to grant immortality. Only there's one problem. It requires pure elf's blood, something a mutt like Elfo can't provide. And when they finally get a single drop, just enough to activate the amulet once, it couldn't come at a worse time. With Elfo being mortally wounded helping Bean, and Zog dropping the bomb that the amulet can also de-petrify her mother. Torn between her friend that died for her and the mother she never knew, Bean chooses Dagmar. It's not an easy decision, but for as much as Bean likes Elfo, the opportunity to meet her mom, to have someone that can help her figure out who she is and what she should be, Bean couldn't let the chance slip through her fingers. And their reunion is overwhelmingly positive, with the two enjoying many of the same activities, though Dagmar's a bit more refined about it. Zog's lady love, though, isn't what she appears to be, petrifying the kingdom and blaming Una for it, and surprise surprise, Dagmar was the one behind her own petrification after a botched attempt at killing Zog. She ends up tricking Bean into escaping with her, and the status quo of the show was smashed to pieces. And there just seemed to be this promise that the second season would be something entirely different.
So that was a fucking lie.
Season 2 took one step forward, slipped on a banana peel, fell on a skateboard, and slid all the way back down to the start. But Bean's own journey of self-discovery turned out to be one of survival, with Dagmar and her siblings plotting to use Bean to fulfill a dark prophecy and pay back their debt to hell, which the show goes to great lengths not to explain. A running theme of this show.
I may have the very thing.
The familial bond Bean had developed with Dagmar is ripped apart. Bean realizes she left her friend to die, forcing Bean to go on a quest to bring Elfo back to life after getting him to damn himself to hell. Roll with it. Our protagonist returns to Dreamland, having been slightly traumatized by the ordeal.
Is that really you? I'm always here for you, Bean.
Okay, she was a lot of traumatized. From here though, the show makes the decision to revert back to the same slapstick we saw in season 1, which if you were anyone watching the show at the time, was a very frustrating thing to see happen, as it felt like the show was doing the same thing that it did in season 1, after taunting us, teasing us with the juicy possibility of a plot. But on repeat viewing, I think there's actually a really good reason for this. Because as frustrating as it was to see the show go back to the same status quo, it's what Bean needs. If season 1 is a story of a young adult struggling with what to do with her life, season 2 is a story about Bean dealing with the traumatic events and recognizing the emotional issues she's been ignoring her entire life. So within this context, it makes sense. It makes sense that she would want to return to what she knows, so that she can take the time to figure herself out. The wacky adventures and bar antics may be the same in how the characters act, but Lucy, Elfo, and Bean are all subtly changed and are in different places in their lives, from the hedonistic delinquents that we saw in season 1. Lucy gets a ball rolling immediately. Now no longer a real demon, he puts his lack of scruples to work as a businessman, buying the bar and doing anything he can to make a quick buck, whether it's selling overpriced strings or scamming dying elves out of their life savings. Meanwhile, Elfo is done simping for Bean after watching her let him die, and is now more assertive, partying with Bean still while spending time with his fellow elves who have now moved in. The kids who refused to grow up finally started to, though this element is very much subtext. Bean herself spends the season in what I can only describe as a find yourself bender, becoming a writer, selling out, doing charity work, fighting the power, reconnecting with her father, building something of a bond with her little brother. Season 2 Bean is processing all the things that she went through and reevaluating her own life. It would be almost beautiful if it wasn't forced into the background. But it is there, and focusing on the subtle shifts in the characters have actually allowed me to love the second season. Though on the whole, the season, much like Bean's own coping mechanisms, are a stopgap, a temporary solution that needs a shift in order to let Bean and the story grow. With episode 9 being the episode where the show pivots to allow its main characters to start running to be her best self. When an airship crashes in Dreamland, the superstitious folk don't know what to make of the sole survivor and his technologically advanced ways, but it's through helping him that Bean discovers science and starts to think beyond her own limiting patriarchal society. Bean, despite her intelligence, limits herself by the standards of Dreamland, fighting certain norms and customs but still very much following the rules and superstitions of her people. Science and positive reinforcement help Bean to see a whole new realm of possibilities, making her more willing to not just question the ideas around her, but to advocate for alternatives. The difference of going from being a critic to creator, if you will. Though Bean ends up killing the sky pilot who was up to no good and trying to kill her father, Bean accidentally does the job for him. Being labeled a witch for her trouble, and with medieval healthcare only killing her dad faster, she takes it upon herself to save Zog, throwing away her chance to escape and is almost burnt at the stake for it, with only the timely intervention of the show's most mysterious MILF and her army of trogs bailing them out. Bringing this season to a close, and starting the season where Bean finally takes control of her life. Bean's journey here has been pretty rocky, and season 3 will prove to be no different, slowly pushing Bean to be the leader of Dreamland, by virtue of her own ability and by virtue of everyone else being awful. Picking up immediately where the two left off, Bean is yet again in the clutches of her mother, who is, again, not so subtly trying to push Bean into being what she wants, an act which Bean isn't falling for, with her mom eating brains certainly not doing them any favors, forcing Bean to escape with her friends, and bamboozling her mom's Trog army by dressing up as Dagmar. Thankfully, the rock dwellers aren't too bright, and believe her, till the real Dagmar pops in, causing a pretty funny scene where they go back and forth pretending to be the other.
No makeup could cover up those freckles, darling, so... Well, you...
And Bean is able to pull off a perfect Dagmar, realizing that her mother never truly loved her, and everything she's done has been for her own manipulative ends, freeing herself from the psychological grip Dagmar held over her, paying off the sitting duck season of emotional growth. Thank God it's not awful. While Bean is dealing with her mother down below, up top, a on-the-mend Zog is trying not to be murdered by his advisors, who are waiting for him to die. Using now King Derek to rule Dreamland, Zog's plan to escape to safety fails when his accomplice is murdered, and Mom from Futurama buries Zog alive. Spending days trapped in a coffin, the king slowly goes insane, only making it out of there alive thanks to grave-robbing Trogs, where he is reunited with Bean, but the traumatic experience has left his mind broken in a way that will only grow more evident as the season goes on. From here, Bean's journey would see her leave Dreamland to chase after Mom, who is revealed to be an agent of Steamland and pulls another failed assassination attempt on Zog, now in the care of his ex-wife Una. Bean, along with her perpetual tag on Elfo, journeying to Steamland, where her ignorance of the new society sees her wandering around the city till she gets a job at a bell factory. This third job goes as well as the first two did. But Bean is charmed by the backbreaking labor and simplistic sense of purpose the company town can provide. Befriending a nondescript worker, Gordy has something of a crush on her. Gordy, to the surprise of no one who didn't recognize the A-tier voice actor talent, is the leader of Steamland and wants Bean to marry him. Partly out of what it seems to be genuine fondness, but primarily it's for the secret power that's hiding beneath Dreamland. Bean is, unsurprisingly, not down to be exploited by another liar claiming to love her, let alone the man whose agents attempted to kill the king. Making her escape, Bean is reunited with Elfo, who had his own B-plot at a freak show, and it is here that Bean meets a character that will radically change her life Mora. A mermaid voice actress with sarcasm and dry wit for days. Mora aids Bean in her escape only to tag along for the allure of an easy ride. It's here that the two instantly hit it off and develop a friendship that, despite Bean's previous choice in partners being almost exclusively male, seems to be leading to more. But what may be even more important here than Bean discovering a part of herself that she didn't know about is that she's coming to terms with her own lack of emotional intimacy with her partners. They were always just an escape, but an escape that led nowhere. Years of this, plus her own substandard upbringing, has left Bean insecure about herself and whether she is even worthy to be loved. Bean and Mora continue to grow closer as they spend time together, but for whatever reason, her fish crush is gone come morning, only to reappear after Bean knocks herself out, leaving the next series of events a giant question mark of whether or not it actually happened. Regardless of whether it did or not, the effect it will have on Bean is all too real. With Bean getting to meet Mora's family and sangria-drenched friends, the two end up going all the way with their feelings, giving Bean the closest thing she's ever come to love that wasn't platonic or compromised by a myriad of communications issues. And then it's gone. Now this is the dream ambiguous BS I was talking about. So after getting ghosted, Bean is a mess and wants to do anything to pull herself out of the post-heartbreak dumps. Finding support and love from a surprising source, her former stepmom Una, who gives Bean a crash course in medical drug use while acting as a soundboard for Bean to get her thoughts out. The two bond as Bean recognizes she wasted years pining for her evil mother, despite Una being a pretty chill, if distant, substitute. In the drug-fueled bonding sesh, Bean comes to a decision that has been building over the course of the series. Seeing that her experience bailing her friends out of trouble, saving her family again and again, Bean decides her purpose in life is to help people. And with the number of factions vying for control of Dreamland's MacGuffin resource, which, again,
I may have the very thing.
just explain it, her people need her more than ever. Picking herself up and doing it for not quite the right reasons, Bean attempts to help her honking mad father rule the kingdom. A task made difficult not just because of the aforementioned honking, but as a secret society led by Prime Minister Oddval work to keep Zog mad and themselves in power, using the rules to keep Bean as far away from the decision making as possible. Undeterred, Bean takes the initiative in helping the kingdom, creating an army, using her pig fiance as a bargaining chip to get money to arm said army, while also doing everything she can to bring her father back from the brink. Everything Bean does to this point is built around the idea of Zog returning to his old self to lead the kingdom. To use his experience to deal with not just the foreign threats plaguing their home, but assuaging her own fears. Bean wants her dad back. And while his mental decline was a source of so-so comedy, it is finally played heartbreakingly real, with Bean realizing he isn't coming back anytime soon, that he might never be the strong figure that he once was. But even in his addled state, Zog can see what Bean herself hasn't, or simply refuse to admit that Bean doesn't need Zog to fix Dreamland's problems, that she is already the leader of Dreamland in all but name, that through her intelligence, resourcefulness, and commitment to the people of Dreamland, Bean is a better leader now than Zog ever was. And it's in this heartbreaking moment of clarity that Bean accepts the responsibility, sending her father away to an asylum where he might hopefully be cured,
Cheers.
while Bean is crowned the Queen of Dreamland, leading her people through a crisis almost immediately and finally getting rid of Elfo. We don't know what type of queen Bean will be. I gotta say, I'm really curious to find out. Now, I don't think it's a perfect show by any means, but I was honestly surprised by how many things that frustrated me on first viewing could be fixed by reinterpreting the pacing and narrative shortcomings of the story as a reflection of Bean's own arc and emotional state. The frustration of the second season resetting to the season 1 status quo being symbolic of Bean diving back into her old coping mechanisms as she processes her mother's betrayal and reevaluating her own life. I don't know if the creators intended for this to be the case, and I'm not sure how far they'll push Bean being the queen, as we've already seen this show's willingness to backpedal on previously huge finales. But in a vacuum, these 3 seasons do a wonderful job at portraying a young adult unsure of their place in the world to someone semi in control of their life and doing everything they can to help others. This isn't the definitive way to interpret the show, but for me, it's the one that makes rewatching it the most enjoyable. So I just wanted to share it with you all. Thank you for watching. This has been Sarcastic Chorus. If you haven't already, please go check out this week's sponsor, Inksethtic. If you enjoyed this video, give it the old like and share combo. And if you're in a really generous mood, subscribe and be kept up to date on all my cartoon content. Thanks again for watching, and have a good one.